What's up, Dunwoody? Welcome back to the podcast, all about Dunwoody, Georgia. My name is Matt Weber. Show is brought to you by Dr. Brett Friedman with Village Orthodontics and Discover Dunwoody, both of which you know, Tim. Tim is the new president of the Dunwoody Homeowners Association, something I've been part of for a while. You've been part of for a while, on and off. I guess let's just get into, if people don't know what the Homeowners Association is, let's get into that first.
Sure. Well, as you may or may not know, the Dunwoody Homeowners Association is 55 years old, formed back in 1970. And of course, it was a much different Dunwoody in 1970 than it is today. The association, the stated goal is to, promote and, the lifestyle and the betterment, of all the citizens of Dunwoody. But it was essentially a de facto board, if you will, that, fought encroachment, commercial encroachment.
They fought for the people of Dunwoody, and there wasn't Dunwoody.
Unwelcome development. And I think the sort of the standard bearer in my book, since I'm in the development business, would be Bob Lunston and his, dealings with the board. And I remember back in the old days, because I had no life and probably still don't, but I would actually watch the DeKalb County Commission meetings, and particularly the planning and zoning applications, because that was of interest to me. And one of the reps at one time asked an applicant if they had talked to the Dunwoody Homeowners Association. The applicant said no. So this county commissioner basically deferred the application until such time that the applicant came to Dunwoody and had a meeting with the Dunwoody Homeowners Association. That's the kind of power that the DHA had in incorporation days. So
we're kind of protecting our area from DeKalb County is the way that I see it. DeKalb County doesn't really care about the areas as much as our immediate area of Dunwoody, which wasn't a city at the time.
And I think that's probably a fair statement. Of course, since incorporation, we have our own mayor and council, our own planning commission that is the protector, if you will, of the interests of Dunwoody. But, we inherited a lot of things. We inherited some zonings pre-incorporation that we, are seeing the fruition of today, High Street being one of them, where there were a boatload of market rate apartments approved, some retail, commercial, there will be future office space. But, those types of things may have been fought in today's world by the city of Dunwoody, whereas we inherited stuff like that from the county.
I don't think High Street's not probably the worst option at the time.
No, I don't.
That was approved in 2006 or something. I mean, it was forever ago, and it just took that long to get here.
It's clean, well done. Some people complain about parking. Some people complain about ingress and egress, but that's going to be the case, I think, with any, mixed use, high density commercial development.
The apartments are so high end too that most of the time there's not kids living there. So it's not filling up our schools. And I see High Street as less of a problem. But the Homeowners Association, again, in my mind, it's kind of now it's kind of switched to protecting homeowners, protecting the people of Dunwoody almost from the city or from, developers and that kind of thing. And so I think there's definitely a good place for us still. Might not be what it used to be, but I still feel like the Homeowners Association means a lot to our city. And I think I hear what you said. Have you talked to the Homeowners Association still,
And I've made the comment, I've talked to a lot of people in the last month, which I sort of alluded to in the first meeting that we had this past Sunday. I talked to members. I talked to people who I would like to have as members. I talked to people who I would like to have as members of my board, if you will. What's your impression? What do you know? What do you think, kind of thing. And the answers that I got were a little surprising. There are a lot of people who don't know as much, but there are also a lot of people in Dunwoody who weren't here in 1998, when I moved here. So it's, a little younger demographic, a little more family, a renewal of the family oriented demographic, in Dunwoody.
Right.
And I think the DHA, probably should make an effort to try to reach those people and get
Mm-hmm.
those people involved, have those people becoming, more active, both in the community, if not the DHA. And I think there's an opportunity to expand the reach of DHA, kind of to your point, because there are new fights, new needs. I don't think we want to be known just as the owner and operator of really good events, although we do that.
Yeah.
But I want to get my planning and zoning voice back, if you will.
Yeah.
We in the April meeting, we have, the Zaxby's people coming. We potentially have the developer who's going to redo a couple of buildings on Perimeter Center East. So I think we're moving in that direction where we will be a box to be checked.
Yeah. Well, and
For
that's your
whatever
wheelhouse
reason
too.
moving forward.
That's what you personally know the best. And so
That's my wheelhouse, and I
yeah.
will die on that sword, if you will.
And we can
Because
have our
I'm one of.
events. We
I'm
can have
sorry.
our events, but then the homeowners association is a lot of development.
Sure.
And so I'm glad there's somebody like you that stepped up to take it.
Well, I appreciate
Probably
that, and I think I joked about it at the meeting. I'm one of the guys who traditionally thinks there should be a building of some type on every piece of dirt. So from a professional perspective and a personal perspective, I'm a little bit of an acquired taste because of what I do for a living. But I think there's, in today's world, there's a happy medium out there. And I think, I think the city has, by and large, done a great job of doing, what the city is supposed to be doing with respect to new development, new construction, new asset classes coming into the city, that may or may not affect somebody in an R100 lot in Dunwoody North, for example,
Right.
which is where you and I live.
And there's a delicate line too, where, the city wants as much revenue brought in. So they want businesses to come here. But, like what we talked, for instance, this week we talked about the Raising Cane's that's, possibly coming to that perimeter mall area. And I thought that was that's a good example of something that I think a lot of people want, but there's a possibility it could get out of hand. There could be cars on the street trying to get in. It's going to be very popular. And so I think that's a good example of what the homeowners association really pushes for.
Sure. And I was happy to see the board, support the application with conditions. Yeah. I think sort of to parlay on that, I think Zaxby's is going to have the same fight, with respect to the SLUP and the drive through and all that. But I think at some point, to use your verbiage, the fine line exists, and it's how we straddle that line in what we do and how we move forward as a city with being pro business versus being, pro community. And again, I think there's a line there, and it's how we straddle that line. I think, helps shape the future for the city where development's concerned.
Yeah. And something you talked about earlier, I want to get back to is you reached out to a bunch of people to figure out what they thought of the homeowners association. And then you recruited some people that from what I know of you both, you have completely opposite. Michael Rock, he was not somebody that's going to back you on everything that you mentioned, but he was somebody that knows the community. And so props to you for, finding somebody that cares about the community and wants to do something, and it might be opposite of what you think.
And, the executive board is set. There's a president, a vice president, a couple of at-large members of the executive board. We have a secretary, Debbie Montgomery. But the president, has the discretion to fill up to, a certain number of seats.
Right.
I don't think that everyone that I bring onto the board, Michael Rock's a great example of that, who looks like me politically or looks like me from a development, support standpoint. I think it's as important to have, I don't want to use the diversity word wrong, but to have a diverse group of people on the board, just like we're looking to expand and have a more diverse group of people, hopefully join the DHA and be active members moving forward. And Michael was a guy who said, I'll show up, I'll be active, I'll be vocal, which he certainly is. And I think we need a little bit of that on the board.
Yeah.
And I'm looking to add more of that vocal individual, more of that active individual, someone who will show up to the meetings. And, the people that show up get to make the decisions. And I want more people to show up so that our decisions are a little more broad-based.
Did you know that Discover Dunwoody plays a vital role in supporting our local businesses? By attracting visitors, they help generate revenue for shops, restaurants, and hotels in the area. Their efforts in marketing Dunwoody is not only benefits the tourists, but it also creates jobs and boosts our local economy. So if you're passionate about supporting local, which I know you are, be sure to follow Discover Dunwoody on social media for updates on featured businesses and events. And if you know anybody planning a visit, send them to discoverdunwoody.com/whatsupdunwoody to find great hotel options. So by booking through that link, you'll be supporting this show and you'll be contributing to the growth of our community. So let's champion our local businesses together. Yeah. And I mean, it was nice to see people my age. Not that I'm young. I turn 45 next month or a couple months from now. But, Michael Rock, Mr. and Mrs. Dunwoody were there. They're young. How about that?
Yeah.
They're, one of the young couples that have come to Dunwoody. And so it was nice. I think they said you invited them too. So, thanks for bringing people there because normally a lot of the time it's just the board.
I didn't mean to interrupt, but Mr. and Mrs. Dunwoody, you've had on this broadcast. Mm-hmm. They are two of the people, we had coffee. I said, I'd love to, pick your brain about some things. I think they are, although she says they aren't, I think they're social media savvy. I'm, an old dinosaur where technology is concerned, but she is one of the people who gave me some surprise answers about the DHA and what maybe the perception of the DHA is. But she's also a person who on her own accord did a chat GPT search about the DHA and the DHA website and gave me like 8 pages of stuff that chat GPT printed out. So I appreciated that. And to your point, yes, that, people like you, people like them, I think is a target audience, if you will, for expanding the reach of DHA. So thank you for bringing up Michael, because I think that's indicative of what I want my board to look like. Thank you for bringing them up, because that represents, a market, if you will, that we have not tapped and we need to help develop the future leaders of the organization. Once guys like me and guys like you get to the point where we're moving on, we need to have bench strength in the DHA, just like any organization does. So thanks for bringing that up as a point of reference.
Yeah. And it's tough to get people to come out to meetings, especially on a Sunday night, like it's especially young people with young kids, like it's difficult. And so it's pushing a rock up the hill, but hopefully
we've talked about it, and, during the fall, there's college football, so you can't really have a meeting on Saturday. On Sundays, even though I'm not a fan, there's professional football. There's always something that's going to draw people away from, hey, I've got nothing to do. Let's go to the DHA meeting. There will always be something. I think we may want to try to move the meeting up a little bit, maybe 6:30 or 7 instead of 7:30. I don't know that 30 minutes or an hour would make a lot of difference, but something to the point where if we have a long-winded meeting and we have good board discussion, that we're not, 10:30 getting out of a meeting on Sunday night. So there's and I don't know where the balance is. To be honest with you.
It's tough. While you're saying it, I'd rather it be later because I can get my kids to bed or, get them ready for the next day and stuff. Sunday nights at the Weber household is making lunches for the week and getting everything under control. And so the later, the better for me.
Sure.
But it was nice, and you're doing all the right things. I have to give you props over the last couple of weeks. Pushing into social media and trying to get, more diverse people there and all of the different things that you're doing to get people there. I think it's great. I think the social media is something that's very necessary for the Homeowners Association.
And thank you for saying that. It's those are in the goals that I had, those are things that I can control, or with a few people can maybe make a difference.
Yeah.
And, why not? I was at dinner with some people, and somehow the DHA came up. And this was before, uh, Bob and I had really started talking in earnest about me stepping up and taking over. A comment was made is, why do we even still need the DHA? Another comment was, the DHA may have gotten a little stale over time. COVID changed a lot of things for a lot of organizations.
Yeah.
But, you have to be, the comment was made, you have to be careful not to do anything to alienate, the traditional membership.
Yeah.
One, I think there is a need for the DHA. I think for a lot of reasons, and I don't want to alienate anyone, but I think there is a time in the life of an organization where maybe the membership needs to be, grabbed by the collar and shaken a little bit. I want to shake a little bit. I want to try to, engender some things that maybe we haven't done in the past, or try some things that maybe we haven't done in the past.
Yeah.
To think that we would ever be a 2,000 or a 2,500 member organization, I don't know if that's possible or not. But like in real estate, you set a goal. I want to be here in June and here by the end of the year, and you have to start at zero. You have to start at a goal and work towards that. So if I say we should be a 2,500 member organization and I miss it by 50%, we've still grown our membership by 500 people,
Right.
and that's
let's get into
people.
that.
So
what does it mean to be a member of the DHA, or to be, a paid member of the DHA? And how do you do it?
Well, there's a couple of things. Our accountant and I were having coffee yesterday, and we talked exactly about that. It's funny. I don't know if you had cameras at the coffee shop or not, but
always
people who join the DHA do it for love of the community, to support, what they know that DHA does. Other than that, there's not a lot of tangible benefit to paying your $40 to join the DHA.
Yeah.
I don't know if we can ever change that. I don't know what there is that we can do that says, here is your token of appreciation, other than, saying we appreciate it. Right. But I think people join the DHA for what they know the DHA stands for. I think they join the DHA to support what we do. The parade being the biggest and most visible thing that we do. Food Truck Thursdays, the farmers market, Light Up Dunwoody. We are the face of many great events in the city of Dunwoody, and I think that is a drawing card, if you will. How can I support what the DHA does? But to your point, not a lot, other than the satisfaction of, doing something, a small token financially. $40, you can't go to Joy D's and buy a steak for $40, but you can get an annual membership to the DHA for that.
Right.
And we have to, I think we have to be attractive, continue to be attractive to people, to make sure that love of community and that love of supporting what the DHA does remains, because we don't have a lot more to give them. And that's a conversation that I had literally at this time yesterday.
Right. Well, so that's the pitch. If you want to spend $40, what you're giving that $40 to is the great events that are put on by the DHA, and kind of supporting just the homeowners in general, because I do feel like we have a lot of pull. And I think that everybody has been affected by the homeowners association at some point, whether it's, a trail in front of your house, or a pet grooming area with barking dogs right behind your house. I mean, there's always something. The setbacks at Publix. Like, I've just heard so many over the years that the homeowners association is an important place for those people to go and complain. And we kind of talk with the city. It's easier for the homeowners association to talk to the city than, 5 separate people on one street that aren't communicating with each other.
Of course. And which goes right back to the point that you and I were talking about a little earlier, getting more involvement, more voice, more input into those things, so that when we go to the city, we are representing the broadest possible base of input that we can, as opposed to the same 20 people, that show up at meetings,
right.
Once
and
a month.
One of the other things that I love about it is that the members of the homeowners association, or, the board of the homeowners association, also kind of has their fingers throughout Dunwoody. So like somebody, knows the planning board really well, or knows, what it takes to get a a change in ordinance, or that kind of stuff.
Right.
There's plenty of people around the city that take part in the homeowners association. And I learned something at every meeting that I go to. It was really interesting this week. We really only talked about one thing. It was that Raising Cane's, and I learned a lot from that. So I think that people would, whether watching it online or showing up at the meeting, it's actually very educational.
Yeah. And I think the future presentations that we have, the Zaxby's presentation will be somewhat like the Raising Cane's presentation. It's a by right use because it's in a commercial center, but they still have to go for the drive-through. The interesting presentation will be the people who are doing the redevelopment in Perimeter Center East at 60 and 65 Perimeter Center East. Yeah. They're going to be converting or proposing to convert a building to for sale condos, proposing to convert another building to 55 and up apartments. And then there's some parking lot there that, sort of some leftover acreage that would be developed for sale townhomes. So you've got Warren Jolly, who's proposing to do that in another building. So all of a sudden, we will have converted underused or non-performing asset classes, behind the Ravinia offices to what could end up being a really vibrant new node of residential activity, which to me is, again, as a developer, is pretty exciting stuff. So I think those presentations will be good, and I hope we will turn out to hear those and to ask a lot of questions of those developers.
At minimum, be able to give the community a recap of what they're talking about, because that's a lot of stuff that most people don't see.
Absolutely.
Let's talk about you, Tim. How did you end up originally with the Homeowners Association, and how did you end up getting stuck as the president?
Well, it's funny. I was talking with someone, and they said, "Congratulations on your self-induced wound," which I thought was pretty funny. But I moved here in 1998 from Alabama. My wife at the time was in the cosmetics business, and she landed a plum job with Lancome. And back then, there was no telecommuting or remote work. So, like a good 90s husband, I packed up and followed my wife, to Atlanta. So we have been here longer than some, not as long as others, but we moved to Dunwoody and frankly never left. Both of my kids went to Vanderland. My daughter graduated from Dunwoody High School. My son went to DeKalb School of the Arts. So we not only moved here and stayed here, but we're one of the poster, families for public education, I guess, because we never made a private school decision.
Were you volunteering back then?
I'm sorry?
Were you volunteering back then? Were you part
Not
of something?
as much. I had to find something to do and, make a living, for the family. But I got involved, in terms of keeping up with, and like I said, watching what was going on with DeKalb County. Became a little bit of a Bob Lunston disciple, if you will.
Yeah.
And got involved with the incorporation effort. I worked on the planning and zoning committee when the city was formed, which was Bob's committee. Yeah. Which was funny. There was a broad base of work that was done then. It was all volunteer work. And I think a lot of people showed up to those meetings ostensibly to try to find out what was going to happen with Dunwoody Village. And then
Yeah.
when the work assignments were handed out, everybody kind of disappeared. So I was the sole author of the Shallowford Road corridor, if you will, of a vision plan, for that corridor. So I
Okay.
got involved, back then as early as incorporation, starting to really, take notice of and pick my spots as to where I thought I might want to get involved with the city. I was on the board for a while when Adrian was president.
Hmm.
In fact, she
That's where we met.
recruited me to the board. And I had some
Me too.
professional things get in the way, and just that was kind of short lived. And then it's been a little bit of a comical story, but Bob and I are both in real estate, so it's not unusual for Bob and I to get together periodically and talk.
Hmm.
And he kept asking me to, if I would consider coming back to the board. And I kept saying my stock answer was, get me a ride in the Wienermobile at the 4th of July parade, and I'll come back to the board, because I thought that's never going to happen. So I can,
Yeah.
I can shoo this board stuff over to the side. But Bob didn't quit, and I remained interested. And then the conversation sort of moved to, hey, I've been doing this for 4 years. I might be thinking of stepping down. And the logical question was, who's going to step up? And there wasn't a good answer to that. So, in my spare time, I would let that mull around in my head. And I thought, this might be a good opportunity for me to get back into the fray and really try to do something to give back and contribute. So that's sort of the Cliff Notes version of how I got back into a position of being considered, as president. And I'm honored and thankful that the board, decided to hand that over to me.
Yeah. Well, it's mixing things up, it has gotten kind of stale over the years, especially during COVID. It was tough. When you're not able to meet, you already can't get people there, and you're not able to meet. It's tough. There's a lot of emails sent out, and but it's nice to have somebody new trying to push some new changes to the board.
And I don't mean that in a derogatory manner when I
Oh yeah,
say,
no,
and again, people's perception of DHA is what it is. It's not good or bad, right or wrong. It is what's out there.
yeah,
And those of us that have the ability maybe to rein that in, or move that to the left or the right, or change the perception, I think it's incumbent in our service to the DHA to try to do that. So that's, again, it's something I can do. I'm excited about doing it. It's not too meddlesome in the workings of the committees or the event chairs. Jimmy Economos doesn't need me to tell him how to produce the 4th of July
right.
parade or
He
light
tells
up
us how to
Dunwoody.
produce it.
Yeah.
Yeah,
You and Penny don't want me involved in the parade. Sue Ellis appreciates me showing up to the farmer's market, but she just wants me to come and buy stuff. She doesn't want
yeah,
me to get into, management philosophy of a farmer's market. And I don't want to.
hmm
We got incredibly talented people doing the work of the DHA. So the things that I control, or that I can control, are the things that I want to be involved in, and let you guys do the job that you're doing very well. And I think, there are growing pains with every relationship, but I think there's the opportunity for all of us to have a lot of fun, and at the end of the year say, we really had a pretty good year at the DHA, and
yeah.
that
They're
would
good.
be.
They're all of those are really good events. And I think that people forget that it's the Homeowners Association putting that together. I think a lot of people think that the parade is the city of Dunwoody, which they
Um,
do help. They offer a lot of stuff. Police, they pay for a lot of stuff. And so it is, what they do is very needed. But yeah, it's a homeowners association that's fitting the bill and, doing the work.
and I
So
think they should remain the DHA events.
yeah.
There's I don't think active discussion, but I think there's always the, what if, comes up with respect to, is it ours or the city's? I think these are our events, and they should remain our events. And, we should fight to not fight as in let's put on the gloves and box, but we should want to maintain ownership, and we should want to continue to operate those events as DHA events, I guess is the
Yeah. And I think the city probably appreciates that they don't have to do the work as well.
You would think,
a lot of work.
right?
A lot of work.
I think two things. One, thanks for letting me do it. I think you probably could tell at the meeting the other night, I'm pretty excited about my part of this.
Yeah.
I just, I hope that it's not too much too fast, but again, I don't think we still need to be here in July talking about doing some of the things that I want to do. That's just wasted time, from an organizational perspective. I mean, that you have things that you do in your restaurant, you have things that you do in your real estate business that I know when you look at those lists, because I've looked at them, it's like, man,
put off.
Yeah. But you really can't afford to do that. And I think from a volunteer organization standpoint, let's not tarry. Let's not delay. Let's get busy, and have some fun doing it.
If people want to learn more about it, it's what is it? DunwoodyGA.org. Is that right?
Correct.
Yeah. DunwoodyGA.org. We would love if you gave us $40 to continue what we think is important work. Help support the parade, the farmers market, all of the things that Dunwoody Homeowners Association does. Thank you, Tim, for stepping up and taking over. It was much needed. Bob's put in his time. He's done a lot of hard work for years and years. So
and I've quoted
people there
in the pay. I was talking with Kathy Cobbs, and she said, "Do you want to say something nice about Bob?" And I said, "Well, who doesn't have anything nice to say about Bob?" And I think I made the comment that it really didn't matter who stepped into this role. I think Bob and the board, and Bob in particular, left whomever took this spot in a position to have nothing but roaring success. So hats off and kudos, to the man that was here before me. And thankfully he decided to stay on the board as my VP. And,
which is always nice. Yeah.
Will keep me, hopefully keep me out of trouble. When he sees trouble brewing, he'll nudge me and say, we probably need to go in another direction.
Right. Well, thanks for coming on, Tim. We appreciate it. And if you're listening to this and you're like, yeah, maybe I should go to one of those meetings, definitely come check it out.
Come check it out. We think we have something. We've always had something to offer to the community, and I think we will continue to have something to offer to the community. And you'll see fresh things from us. We're going to update the logo. We're going to update the website. We're going to look a little fresher, look a little more current. And I think all those things, bode well for the organization. And hopefully if you have any questions, give me a call, shoot me an email. I'm accessible and I want to be accessible for the citizens of Dunwoody. So thanks for having me on, man. I've really enjoyed this.
Yeah, man. All right. We'll talk soon.
All right, sir. Thank you.